Hello everyone and welcome to round number 3 of the Tata chess tournament in Wijk aan Zee, the Netherlands. In this video we'll have a look at the game between Daniel Dubov and Vidit. Dubov was on 50% and Vidit was among the leaders with 1.5 out of 2. Dubov is known to be a very aggressive player, so there could definitely be fireworks expected in this game. Anyway, Dubov started the game off with the move 1e4, a little bit of a surprise. He's generally more of a d4 player, and Vidit decides to keep it solid with the move e5. Alright, so Dubov goes knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. Also known as the Giuoco piano, the Italian game, or the Gucci piano, however you want to call it. Knight f6 by Vidit, inviting Dubov to go into the fried liver attack with knight at g5, but Dubov decides to keep it a bit slower for now and goes d3, bishop c5. So now it sort of transposes into normal Italian. Dubov goes c3, d6, and bishop g5, pinning this knight on f6 right away. Alright, so Vidit goes h6, bishop h4, and a5. Generally, if your opponent puts a bishop on g5, I would recommend playing h6 to sort of see what their intentions are. So you always have the option of going g5 later on. You don't want to commit to g5 just yet, but it's nice to include h6, bishop h4. Anyway, a5 by Vidit. And here Dubov came up with a very interesting concept. He played the move knight to a3. Now usually what white does in these positions is they go with knight to d2. And sometimes knight f1 to g3 is what they like to do, or knight e3. But knight a3 is a bit weird because it gives black the opportunity to take and ruin white's pawn structure, and that's exactly what Vidit did. He took the knight, so Dubov recaptured, queen e7 by Vidit, and Dubov castled. And here, it's looking pretty standard. I was expecting a move like castles by Vidit, after which the game is approximately even. I mean, white has the two bishops, but once again, black has a better pawn structure. I mean, these double pawns here aren't too pretty. Anyway, Vidit played the move knight to b8, and you might be wondering, like, wait, what is this? Why would he undevelop his own knight? Well, his idea is to play knight to d7 and sort of reinforce this knight on f6, which is, once again, pinned. Alright, so Dubov goes d4, knight to d7 by Vidit, and rook b1 by Dubov. A bit of a surprising move, because this allows the following sequence. Vidit went g5, bishop g3, so he breaks the pin, and now he takes a pawn on e4. So if Dubov wanted to prevent that, he could have just played a move like rook to e1, and probably white is a little bit better. Once again, he has his double pawns, but he also has the two bishops and a big center, but of course black is very, very solid. Anyway, after rook to b1, Vidit played g5. He was alright. He was like, alright, give me that pawn. Bishop to g3, knight takes e4, and there's no way for white to get the pawn back right away. So Dubov played queen to c2, and here, as I was watching the game, I was expecting Vidit to take on g3, but here what Dubov probably would have done is play pawn takes g3 and open up the file for his rook. And with the bishop also looking to that square, it's getting pretty dangerous for Vidit. There's not an easy way to defend that pawn. If you play someone like knight f6, there's always tactics with pawn takes c5, pawn takes e5, and knight takes c5. If you take that knight, guess what? You're getting destroyed on the e-file here. So very difficult to keep things close here, which is why Vidit plays the move f5, strengthening the knight on e4. Alright, so Dubov trades on e5. Once again, since black's king is in the center, he wants to open up the position. Vidit recaptured and rook fe1. So he's just improving the position, and now it's not easy for Vidit. This pawn on e5 is always loose. You can't really move the knight. I mean, if you move the knight here, for example, you're going to hang this pawn, the center opens up, and this is bad news for black. So Vidit takes on g3, pawn takes g3 by Dubov. Now there's no real value anymore in f takes g3, because the f-file, because the rook is no longer on the f-file. So takes with the pawn, and e4 by Vidit. Once again, he has to try to keep the e-file closed. So Dubov now goes g4. He wants to undermine this pawn because he knows, hey, if I can chip away this pawn, then e4 is going to drop. And then once again, black's king is going to come under massive fire. Here, a very nice move by Vidit. He goes knight to c5. Knight c5 is a very nice move because it guards the pawn on e4 and the pawn on b7. Because notice his rook on b1 is looking down at that pawn. Alright, so Dubov goes knight to d4, increasing the pressure on the pawn on f5, and here Vidit makes a very, very good move. He plays rook to f8. Now, he's protecting this pawn, but what's really impressive about this move is that he senses that he can take the time to make such a move, because his king is still in the center, right? If Dubov gets a couple moves to open up, Vidit is just going to get blown off the board. but rook f8 is a very, very good move to keep things closed. Alright, so Dubov trades on f5, Vidit recaptures, and it looks alright for black, right? I mean, he's ready to castle on the next move, queenside castling, after which, you know, black is up a pawn. What does white really have? Once again, this knight on c5 is pretty strong, it's guarding this, and the knight on c5 cannot be dislodged. Why doesn't have a move like b4? Because the pawns are over here. But now Dubov comes up with an amazing move. Rook takes b7. Who saw that coming? Now, you might think like, wait, isn't he just hanging a rook? What if black just takes? But if black takes, white suddenly is going check. And guess what? Where's this king gonna go? If you block with a bishop, there's rook takes c4, and you're losing your queen, and white is just much, much better with the queen against the two rooks. So here white is winning. So you cannot draw back your bishop. You also cannot move your king over here, because guess what? Knight c6 with a fork. And once again, you're losing your queen. Then what happens if you go king f7? Well, if you go king f7, then white is going to take the bishop over here. So no easy choices here for Vidit. But instead, so he realizes that he cannot take the rook, right? Do the bishop b5. But then what else is he going to do, right? But here Vidit comes up with a very, very strong move. He goes rook to f6. And this move is very important because if white now gives a check on b5, he can move the king to f8. And once again, the rook is still guarding this bishop over here. So rook f6, very, very impressive move by Vidit. But now Dubov comes up with a very fascinating move. He goes queen to b1. Wait, what? Wasn't this rook under attack? Everyone was expecting Dubov to move the rook, like rook b5, maybe rook b1, rook b2. But instead he comes up with this move. Alright, so once again, he's threatening rook b8 and go after the king. Looking very, very tough for Vidit. But Vidit comes up with another good move. He comes with knight takes b7, queen takes, and rook to d8. And believe it or not, even though white has a bunch of options here, and the king is still wide open, black is holding on here move by move. Dubov takes an f5, removing the defender of the e4 pawn. Right now he's ready to take here and pin the queen to the king. Vidit recaptures, rook takes c4, and now Vidit comes up with a very important rook d1 check. Alright, let's have a look why including this check is important. If he goes rook e5 right away, there's queen c6 check. Okay, if you go king f8, then queen takes h6, check. The king has to move back over here, and then queen h8. White picks up the rook, he will be up an extra bishop, and white is completely winning. Now, what happens if black goes rook to d7? Well, here white is giving a check here. If you go here, you get checkmated, so that's not a good idea. And if you go to d8, white's going to give a check on g8, forcing you to block with your queen. But the queen was busy defending the rook over here, so I can just take, because the queen is protected. And once again, we have an endgame where white is up a bishop and completely winning. So then why exactly is this move rook d1 so important? Well, with rook d1, king h2, and now rook e5, Vidit was able to meet queen c6 check with king to d8. Alright, but once again, this king is wide open. Does white not have anything? I mean, white has a very tricky move here, which is the move bishop to b5. Alright, so with this move, white is threatening queen a8 checkmate. And it's not easy to defend against that. Because after bishop b5, if you take that bishop, rook takes c7, you lose your queen. And white is winning. So then what does black do? Black plays the move queen to d6. And why queen d6? Well, it's making way for the king here. So queen e8 is not checkmate. And what's also very important, that if Dubov would play a move like queen to c5, there would always be queen e8. Alright, he would be forced to take, and rook takes e8, checkmate. The bishop guards the rook and also takes away this square. So then what is the difference with queen to d6? Well, with queen to d6, white cannot play the move queen e8. And you're like, wait, what is the difference? But after queen e8, rook takes e8, you cannot play rook takes e8 because of check. That is quite fascinating. So suddenly white is lost here. So Dubov, realizing that there's no win with bishop b5, instead he goes queen a8 check. Vidit steps the king up and he goes bishop b5. Right, so he's giving checks to the king. The king has to go to e6. If black takes the bishop here, he's going to lose his queen. And with the king wide open and this queen just going after all the pawns, white is much better. You can also now go king d6, because that allows checkmate on 1. Right, so king e6 is the only move. And now it feels like, okay, the king, of course it's still wide open, but white's attacking army is also limited, and black is up in exchange. So it felt like Dubov had to try to look for a draw here. So he goes queen c8 check, king f6, queen h8 check, king f5, and here is where Dubov went wrong. He played the move f3, which was not the right move. Instead, he had to find the move queen to c8 check. And you might be wondering, like, wait, isn't that just, can't black just take the rook? Well, if black takes the rook on e4, there's queen g4 check. The king can only go here because all the other squares are guarded. And if you go to d5, queen c4 check, king d6, queen c6, checkmate. Look at that triangulation, kind of. Anyway, so queen c8 was the move, and black doesn't have a good way to defend the draw. If he goes queen e6, there's queen f8 check. Now, if you take the rook now, queen f3, checkmate. If you go queen f6, well, now I'm going to go g4 and force your king away from the defense of the queen. If you take the rook now you lose your queen, and white is winning. So queen c8 was the move here for Dubov to make the draw. So queen c8, black's best option is to go king f6, and the game would have probably ended in the draw with queen h8, king f5, and just a repetition. But after f3, now Vidit took the rook in e4, pawn takes, and king takes e4, centralizing the king, but all the squares are covered. Like d4 is covered. White doesn't have any unpleasant checks, and the king can simply go over here, and the king will be completely safe. So Dubov gave a check. Dubov gave a check. King e3, bishop c6. Vidit gave a check. Now he's going after the white king himself. g3, g4, making way for the queen. Dubov gave a check on a7, but after king d2, he threw in the title. I said that again. He threw in the towel because his king is simply getting checkmate. Queen h5 is coming, and there's only nothing white can do. After someone like queen f2, you can just go king c1. Once again, the king is completely safe, and your own king is getting smoked. So very, very impressive victory for Vidit, who showed some amazing calculation, navigating his way through all the complications, warding off Dubov's attack, and then started his own. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.